What if I told you that almost every major theory about From has been both right and wrong? That sounds impossible, but that's exactly why this show has built one of the most obsessive fan communities on television. Since its premiere, viewers have tried to explain the town using every idea imaginable. Some believed everyone was dead. Others were convinced it was a government experiment. There were theories about vampires, ancient curses, pocket dimensions, Norse mythology, Native American legends, fairies, time travel, reincarnation, and even simulations controlled by artificial intelligence. Every new season seemed to destroy half of those ideas while quietly making the other half even stronger. The strange part is that the writers never rush to explain anything. Instead, they leave breadcrumbs, a drawing that doesn't make sense until 2 seasons later, a symbol hidden in the background that suddenly becomes important, a single line of dialogue that fans spend months trying to decode. That's what separates from most mystery shows. It's not just asking you to solve one puzzle. It's asking you to solve dozens of puzzles that all seem connected, even when you don't know how. And that's why today we're doing something different. Instead of focusing on one mystery, we're tracing the entire history of the fandom. We're going back to the beginning and examining every major theory that shaped the conversation over 4 seasons. We'll look at where each theory came from, what clues supported it, what later episodes changed, and whether it's still alive today. Some theories age surprisingly well. Others collapsed the moment new evidence appeared. And a few have quietly transformed into something much bigger than anyone expected. By the end of this documentary, we'll rank every major theory, separate confirmed facts from speculation, and try to answer the biggest question of all: what is From actually about? But to understand why fans became so obsessed, we have to go back to the first episode. Because before anyone was talking about monsters, everyone was talking about a road point. One of the smartest decisions the writers ever made happens before the horror really begins. Jim, Tabitha, Julie, and Ethan aren't looking for trouble. They're just another family driving down an ordinary road. Then they reach a fallen tree. It doesn't glow. It doesn't open into a portal. Nothing supernatural happens. It's just a tree. Naturally, they turn around. Anyone would. But instead of finding another route, they end up right back where they started. The same town, the same streets, the same impossible situation. It's such a simple moment that many viewers overlooked how important it really was. Because the fallen tree isn't just an obstacle. It's a filter. Everyone who ends up trapped in the town encounters it first. That immediately created the fandom's very first mystery. What exactly does the tree do? At first, this seemed obvious. The tree had to be some kind of supernatural gateway. If every person sees it before becoming trapped, then the tree must mark the point where reality changes. But almost immediately, fans notice something strange. Nobody actually crosses the tree. Everyone turns around before reaching it. That completely changes the theory. If they never cross into another world, then how did they arrive there? Some viewers suggested the tree itself wasn't magical. Instead, the decision to turn around somehow completed the transition. Others believed the tree wasn't an entrance at all. It was a warning. One last chance to leave before the town claimed you. That idea became even more interesting when people noticed another detail. No 2 characters arrive together unless they're already traveling together. The Matthews family, the Stevens family, Boyd and Ellis, Donna and her sister. Everyone enters the story through separate journeys. The tree doesn't gather strangers. It intercepts them. That raises an unsettling possibility. Maybe the town doesn't randomly capture people. Maybe it chooses them. This theory has survived every single season, and every new revelation seems to make it stronger. Think about the people trapped in the town. On the surface, they appear completely random. A sheriff, an engineer, a doctor, a schoolgirl, a bus driver, a priest, a waitress. People from different backgrounds, different ages, different states. Nothing connects them. Or does it? As the story progresses, we begin learning about each character's life before they arrived. Many were standing at a crossroads. Jim and Tabitha were struggling to save their marriage. Boyd had recently retired from the military and was searching for purpose. Father Cattry carried deep guilt. Sarah felt isolated. Donna had experienced profound loss. Christie's future had become uncertain. Time and again, the show introduces people whose lives were already changing before they reached the tree. That inspired one of the fandom's oldest ideas. The town doesn't choose people at random. It chooses people at moments of transition. Not because they're special, but because they're vulnerable. It's as if the town waits until someone's life has begun to fracture. Then it pulls them inside. At first, this sounded like pure coincidence. But later seasons complicated things. Miranda had visions before arriving. Tabitha also experienced visions. Jade was already seeing strange symbols. Elgin dreamed about the town before he ever reached it. Suddenly, the selection process looked far less random than anyone imagined. This theory is closely related, but much darker. Instead of the town choosing people because of who they are, it chooses them because it always intended to. Look closely at how unlikely many arrivals really are. Different highways, different states, different years, different vehicles. Yet everyone ends up at the same impossible location. The statistical odds are almost impossible. Unless it isn't chance. Imagine throwing thousands of darts from different cities across America. Every single one lands on the exact same point. That's what From asks us to believe. Unless some force is guiding them. One of the strongest pieces of evidence comes from Victor. Victor has lived in the town longer than anyone else. Over the years, he's watched countless people arrive. Different generations, different decades, different lives, but always the same pattern. People appear. The cycle continues. If arrivals were random, Victor's long history should reveal exceptions. Instead, it suggests consistency. Someone, or something, is maintaining the process. Here's where things become even stranger. Many fans stopped asking how the town traps people. Instead, they asked whether the road itself is real. Notice something peculiar. Nobody ever finds the highway again. No matter how long they drive, they remain trapped inside the loop. This led to the pocket dimension theory. According to this idea, the town isn't hidden somewhere in America. It's completely separate from our world. The road doesn't physically connect to it. Instead, travelers are pulled into a contained reality with its own geography and its own rules. That would explain several mysteries at once. Why maps never help. Why radio communication behaves strangely. Why weather changes unexpectedly. Why space itself feels inconsistent. And later, when the faraway trees are introduced, this theory becomes even more convincing. If trees can ignore normal distance, why couldn't the road ignore it too? Today, this remains one of the strongest theories in the fandom. Not because it's flashy, but because almost every supernatural event points toward reality itself being unstable inside the town. Now here's something fascinating. Go back and watch the pilot again. Not for the monsters, not for the dialogue. Watch the people. Almost everyone immediately starts thinking about escape. Build a radio. Find another road. Search the forest. Climb higher. Dig underground. They approach the problem like engineers, like scientists, like rational people. The town seems to expect that. Almost every attempt to escape leads to a new mystery instead of a solution. It's as if the town wants curiosity. It rewards investigation with more questions. That's a pattern we'll keep seeing throughout the series. Whenever someone gets close to understanding one mystery, another appears, almost like the town is teaching them or testing them. And that's exactly why the next theory became so popular. Because fans stopped asking where the town was. Instead, they started asking, who built it? By the end of the first few episodes, most viewers were asking the wrong question. Everyone wanted to know how to escape. But the real question wasn't how to leave. It was, who built this place in the first place? Because once you stop looking at the monsters and start looking at the town itself, something becomes obvious. Nothing here actually makes sense. The buildings look normal. The streets look ordinary. The diner serves breakfast. There's a church, a sheriff's station, a clinic, a school, even a motel swimming pool. At first glance, it feels like a small American town frozen in time. But then your brain starts asking simple questions. Questions nobody in town can answer. Where does the electricity come from? Who stocked the diner before anyone arrived? Who built the houses? Why is there a motel sign? Without a motel? And perhaps the strangest question of all, why does this place feel less like a real town and more like someone's idea of a town? That single observation gave birth to one of the oldest theories in From history. Long before Season 2 introduced Martin. Long before the music box. Long before anyone talked about Storywalkers or the Man in Yellow. Fans believed one thing. Someone built this place. Not nature. Not magic. Someone. But why? The first clue isn't hidden. It's sitting in plain sight. The architecture. Walk through the town in your mind. Nothing feels ancient. Nothing feels medieval. Nothing feels futuristic. Instead, everything resembles rural America from somewhere between the 1950s and the early 1970s. The diner, the gas station, the houses, the sheriff's office. Everything feels familiar. Almost too familiar. It's like someone recreated America from memory. Not perfectly, just well enough. Imagine asking someone who's never lived in America to build an American town using only photographs. The result might look convincing until someone asks how anything actually works. That's exactly what From feels like. The buildings exist, the systems don't, and that's where the mystery begins. Jim Matthews notices something that almost everyone else ignores. Electricity. It works. Every light turns on. Every refrigerator runs. Every lamp functions. But where's the power plant? Where are the transformers? Where are the substations? Where are the transmission lines? For an engineer like Jim, this isn't a small detail. It's impossible. Electricity doesn't simply exist. It has to come from somewhere. Naturally, Jim starts investigating. What he discovers changes everything. The wires don't lead anywhere meaningful. They're not connected to a normal electrical system. In fact, the infrastructure itself seems incomplete. It's almost as if someone wanted the appearance of electricity without understanding the engineering behind it. This immediately split the fandom into two camps. Supporters argued that whoever created the town wasn't trying to build a functioning civilization. They only needed it to look convincing, like a movie set or a stage. Think about Hollywood. Most buildings are only facades. The front looks real. The inside may not even exist. You don't build plumbing into every fake storefront. You only build enough for the audience to believe it. Fans wondered whether From followed the same principle. The town wasn't designed for humans. It was designed to observe humans. That idea became much bigger after Jim's radio experiment. Because if someone could hear Jim, maybe someone was already watching him. Believe it or not. One of the biggest mysteries in From isn't supernatural at all. It's a motel. Or rather, the lack of one. Nearly every first-time viewer notices the swimming pool. Some notice the motel sign. But then, something strange happens. There isn't actually a motel. Just the sign. Just the pool. It's almost funny. Until you realize, nobody in town questions it anymore. Victor doesn't explain it. Donna doesn't explain it. Boyd doesn't explain it. Everyone accepts that a motel somehow disappeared while leaving its swimming pool behind. Fans immediately started asking questions. Was the motel destroyed? Was it never built? Did it disappear? Or was the creator of the town interrupted before finishing construction? It sounds ridiculous. Until you remember, the town itself already feels unfinished. Maybe the motel isn't missing. Maybe it was never completed. That possibility opened an entirely new theory. This idea appeared after viewers noticed something interesting. The town changes. Not dramatically. Subtly. New structures appear. Old locations become important. Weather begins changing after years of remaining stable. The environment doesn't behave like a fixed location. It evolves. Some fans suggested the town wasn't finished. It was still under construction. Not by humans. By whatever force controls it. Imagine building a giant experiment while the experiment is already running. You don't stop everything. You simply keep adding pieces. That would explain why every season introduces new locations. The caves, the dungeon, the lighthouse, the settlement, the cabins, the tunnels. The town keeps revealing new layers, almost as if someone keeps expanding the map. Of course, there's another explanation. Maybe those places were always there. The characters simply hadn't found them yet. Both possibilities remain open. Up until this point, the town felt abandoned. Dangerous, but abandoned. Jim changes that. Instead of accepting their situation, he starts thinking like an engineer. If electricity works, maybe communication works too. So he builds a radio tower. It's one of the most important decisions anyone makes in the series. Because for the first time, someone answers. The voice says something impossible. It tells Jim, "Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole." Think about what that means. Whoever answered knew exactly what Tabitha was doing. At that exact moment, inside her own house, that single sentence destroyed dozens of theories overnight. Because now the fandom knew one thing. Someone was watching. This became the dominant theory after season 1. The voice on the radio wasn't random. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't interference. It was intelligent. It understood the town. It knew the residents. It monitored their actions. The obvious question became, how? The first explanation was surveillance. Hidden cameras, microphones, some kind of scientific experiment. It sounds reasonable until you remember the impossible geography. Then another idea emerged. Maybe the town itself is alive. Instead of cameras, the environment watches. The trees, the buildings, the forest. Every location becomes part of one giant observing system. It's almost like the town has its own nervous system. That idea may sound strange, but later seasons repeatedly show that the environment reacts to human behavior. The forest changes. The weather changes. Even the faraway trees appear to respond differently depending on the traveler. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the town is paying attention. When people first start watching From, they think the monsters are the mystery. They're wrong. The monsters are actually the distraction. That's one of the smartest tricks the writers ever pulled. During the first few episodes, everything revolves around surviving the night. Close the windows. Lock the doors. Hang the talisman. Stay quiet. Naturally, viewers begin asking the obvious questions. What are these things? But after 4 seasons, a different question has become much more important. Why do they exist at all? Because the deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes that these creatures aren't acting like ordinary predators. They're following rules. They're playing a role. And that changes everything. That if there's one monster theory that has survived every season, it's this one. The creatures were once ordinary people. The evidence starts with their appearance. Unlike zombies or traditional monsters, they don't hide their humanity. They wear everyday clothes. A milkman, a nurse, a cheerleader, a bride, a mechanic, a waitress. Their outfits resemble ordinary Americans from decades ago, and they don't seem like disguises. They look like the clothes those people actually wore. Then there's the way they speak. They don't grunt. They don't roar. They hold conversations. They remember names. They manipulate emotions. Jasmine doesn't break in a colony house by force. She spends time gaining Kevin's trust until he willingly lets her inside. That's not instinct. That's memory and strategy. As the series progresses, we also learn more about the town's history and its repeated cycles. Without spoiling every reveal, the mythology increasingly links the monsters to the town's past rather than portraying them as random supernatural creatures. This theory has become stronger over time. The show still hasn't fully explained the monster's origin, but it consistently portrays them as something closer to corrupted people than wild beasts. This question has been asked since episode 1. Why walk? If they can outrun humans, why not sprint? Fans proposed several explanations. The first was simple. They don't need to. They know nobody can escape the town. Walking builds fear. It gives victims time to panic. It turns every chase into psychological torture. Another idea is that they can't run. Not because they're weak, but because whatever governs the town imposes rules on everyone, humans and monsters alike. If true, the monsters aren't free. They're trapped within the same game as the residents. The show hasn't confirmed this, but one thing is clear. The monsters consistently follow patterns instead of improvising. That suggests rules rather than preferences. That first, it seems obvious that the creatures kill for food. But watch their behavior. They rarely rush. They smile. They talk. They taunt. They enjoy giving people hope before taking it away. Many attacks are drawn out rather than efficient. That led to a popular theory. The monsters don't primarily feed on flesh. They feed on emotional suffering. Whether that's literally true or simply reflects their cruelty remains unknown, but the series repeatedly emphasizes psychological torment over simple hunting. Notice how often the town destroys hope just as people begin to believe they're making progress. That's a recurring pattern across all 4 seasons. Season 1 gives viewers one of the biggest clues when Tabitha discovers the underground tunnels. For the first time, we see where the monsters rest during the day. The discovery changes the conversation. Until then, fans imagine the creatures wandering endlessly through the forest. Instead, they have a place. They sleep. They keep personal items. They appear connected to the tunnels beneath the town. Some fans believe the caves are simply a shelter. Others argue they're far more important. What if the tunnels are older than the town itself? What if the town was built above them rather than the other way around? That possibility would explain why so much of the mythology points downward. Roots, stone chambers, ancient symbols, hidden passages. The deeper characters travel, the older the environment appears. The surface may be modern. The underground feels ancient. When Smiley first appeared, many viewers assumed he was simply another monster. Then Boyd killed him. For the first time, one of the creatures died. That moment shattered another assumption. The monsters were not invincible. Later developments surrounding Smiley raised even more questions about how these creatures function and whether death is truly permanent for them. Fans debated whether Smiley held a special role among the monsters or whether his death triggered changes in the town's balance. The series hasn't fully answered those questions, but it made one thing clear. The monsters are part of a larger system rather than isolated threats. One of the most intriguing theories isn't about what the monsters are. It's about who they answer to. They rarely act independently. They appear coordinated. They stop when certain conditions are met. They don't violate the talisman's protection. As the mythology expands, it's increasingly suggested that larger forces influence events in the town. That doesn't necessarily mean the monsters are mindless servants, but it does raise the possibility that they're not the highest power in this world. By season 4, the focus of fan theories shifts dramatically away from the monsters themselves and toward the entities that may be controlling the town. If that's true, then the creatures we've feared since episode May 1st actually be the lowest level of the hierarchy. One of the biggest changes in fan thinking happened after later seasons. Early on, viewers believed the monsters were the final enemy. Now, many fans see them as only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The mysteries of Martin, the music box, the boy in white, the Anghkooey children, the man in yellow, and the town itself suggest that the monsters are symptoms of something deeper. They're terrifying, but they may not be in control. And if that's true, defeating the monsters alone would never be enough to escape. Up until this point, every theory about From focused on the town. Who built it? Who was watching everyone? Where did the monsters come from? Then season 2 completely changed the conversation, because Boyd stepped into a faraway tree, and instead of finding another part of the forest, he found someone who should never have existed. A man chained to a wall. A man who somehow knew Boyd. A man who knew Abby. A man carrying worms beneath his skin. His name was Martin. And from that moment on, fans stopped asking, "What are the monsters?" Instead, they began asking, "What if the monsters aren't the real enemy?" One sentence changed the entire mythology. Martin looks at Boyd and says, "The creatures are just the tip of the spear." That line is probably one of the most important in the entire series, because it immediately tells us something. Everything we've survived since episode 1, the smiling monsters, the nightly attacks, the talismans, those aren't the main threat. They're only the beginning. That single line completely changed fan theories overnight. Before Martin, people thought the monsters ruled the town. After Martin, many believed the monsters were simply soldiers. Something else was giving the orders. His is one of the few theories that has actually become stronger every season. Season 3 expanded the mythology. Season 4 introduced even more powerful forces, reinforcing the idea that the night creatures are only one layer of the town's hierarchy. The monsters are dangerous, but they are not the final enemy. Now comes the biggest mystery. Who exactly is Martin? The show gives us only fragments. He's a Marine. He's been imprisoned for an incredibly long time. He knows Boyd's wife. He knows Abby's beliefs. He knows Julie. He knows how the dungeon works. He knows what's coming when the music starts. That's impossible, unless Martin somehow exists outside normal time. This is the oldest explanation. Martin entered the town decades earlier. He became trapped. He was eventually imprisoned. Over time, he learned the town's secrets. Simple. It explains the Marine tattoo. It explains why he understands the town. But it doesn't explain how he knows Abby, or Boyd, or Julie. Those people hadn't met him. This theory became much stronger after later seasons introduced story walking and non-linear events. If time isn't linear inside the dungeon, Martin could meet people from different points in history. That would explain why he recognizes Boyd, why he knows Julie, why he speaks as if he's lived through multiple cycles. The dungeon may not exist in time. It may exist outside it. Several later episodes reinforce the idea that some locations in Fromville don't follow ordinary chronology. Right now, this is probably the strongest Martin theory. Not because it's proven, because it explains the greatest number of clues. After Martin cuts Boyd, worms begin crawling beneath Boyd's skin. At first, everyone assumes Boyd has been infected, including Boyd himself. He's terrified. Christy can't explain it. Nobody knows what's happening. But then something unbelievable happens. Boyd transfers the worms into Smiley, and Smiley dies. That changes everything. Fans immediately split into two groups. The worms were a disease. Martin passed it on. Boyd accidentally weaponized it. Simple. The worms were actually a weapon. Martin wasn't infecting Boyd. He was arming him. Instead of giving Boyd a curse, he was giving him the only thing capable of killing a monster. That changes Martin's entire character. Instead of becoming a victim, he becomes someone making one final sacrifice. Personally, this theory fits Martin's behavior much better. Think about his actions. He repeatedly tells Boyd to leave. He never tries to escape himself. He transfers the worms only when there's no time left. Everything Martin does suggests purpose, not desperation. This theory exploded after fans noticed something incredible. Boyd finds the dungeon, meets Martin, escapes, returns later, and it's gone. Only ruins remain. The physical dungeon seems to appear only under certain conditions. What does that mean? Fans proposed several ideas. The dungeon isn't a place. It's an event. Or it's another layer of reality. Think of Fromville like multiple floors in a building. The town exists on one floor. The caves exist below. The dungeon exists somewhere between worlds. You don't simply walk there. You have to enter under the right conditions. Later developments involving Julie and story walking strengthen the idea that some places are disconnected from normal space and time to make tea first. Everyone focused on the object, the music box. But over time, fans realize something. The music box isn't important. The thing connected to it is. Whenever the melody plays, bad things happen. Martin panics. The ballerina appears. People become trapped. Nightmares become reality. 3 victims are targeted. The melody behaves less like a song and more like the signature of a supernatural force point. One of the most common fan interpretations is that the music box isn't the monster itself. It's a doorway or a key. Destroying the box stopped that specific threat, but it didn't end the larger evil behind the town. Recent fan discussions still debate whether that storyline is finished or simply one phase of a bigger cycle, that I don't think the music box was ever the villain. I think it was a mechanism, something that allowed another entity to act. The show repeatedly separates objects from the powers controlling them. The talismans, the bottle tree, the violin melody, they're all tools. Not the source point. One of the creepiest patterns in Season 2 is repetition. The entity connected to the music box doesn't attack everyone. It focuses on 3 people, 3 victims, 3 dreams, 3 imprisonments. Fans immediately began wondering why the number 3 keeps appearing. Some believe it's a ritual. Others think it's a rule of the entity itself. The show hasn't explained the pattern, but it recurs often enough that many viewers see it as intentional rather than coincidence. But here's the part one think many viewers missed. Martin wasn't introduced to answer questions. He was introduced to change the scale of the story. Before Martin, everyone believed they understood the game. Survive the monsters. Stay indoors. Wait for daylight. After Martin, the audience realized the monsters were only level 1. Beyond them were entities tied to dreams, music, memory, time, and forces that seemed capable of manipulating the entire town. That shift completely transformed from a survival horror show into a layered supernatural mystery with multiple levels of danger. If Martin changed who the enemy is, then the next mystery changed what the story is actually about. For the first 2 seasons, it was easy to believe From was a survival horror show. Stay inside. Don't open the windows. Trust the talismans. Survive until sunrise. But then the writers slowly shifted the focus away from survival and toward memory. Not just remembering events, remembering lives. The more clues we received, the more one idea kept resurfacing. What if the people trapped in Fromville have been here before? That single possibility transformed nearly every major theory in the fandom. And at the center of it all were 2 mysteries: the boy in white and the children who whisper one word over and over again. Anghkooey. From his very first appearance, the boy in white felt different. Unlike the monsters, he never attacks anyone. Instead, he appears at critical moments. He guides Victor. He leads Ethan. He helps Sarah. And in one of the show's biggest twists, he pushes Tabitha out of the lighthouse window, a moment that initially looks like murder, but ultimately allows her to leave the town. That raises an obvious question. Is he actually helping? For years, most fans answered yes. He repeatedly appears when someone is in immediate danger or close to an important discovery. But there's a problem. He never explains anything. He gives directions, never answers. He warns people, never tells them why. It's almost as if he's following rules that prevent him from revealing the truth. Directly point, one of the smartest writing choices in From is that the boy in white behaves more like a guide than a hero. He doesn't solve problems. He nudges people toward them. That means he may not be all-powerful. He could be just another player inside the same game. This theory exploded after later revelations about the Anghkooey children. We learned that the children were victims of an ancient sacrifice connected to the curse on the town, and many fans began asking why the boy in white looks so different from them. He wears white. He's calm. He doesn't appear decayed. Unlike the other children, he never repeats Anghkooey. That has led to several fan theories. The most popular is that he wasn't one of the sacrificed children, but someone connected to them. Another common theory is that he escaped the ritual while the others did not. This idea appears frequently in community discussions, but it remains speculation, not something the show has confirmed. The show intentionally separates the boy in white from the Anghkooey children. Whether he's a survivor, another victim, or something else entirely, the writers clearly want viewers to notice that distinction. For multiple seasons, this single word haunted the audience. The children repeated it constantly. Tabitha heard it. Jay heard it. Viewers tried to connect it to dozens of languages. Some thought it was a demon's name. Others believed it was a place. Then the series revealed that the word is connected to remembering, reframing the children's message as a plea rather than a threat. That revelation changed everything. The children weren't trying to scare the survivors. They were trying to wake them up. This is one of the biggest turning points in the series. It tells us that memory, not escape, is the key to breaking the cycle. Few theories generated as much discussion as the idea that certain characters are reincarnations. The series ultimately reveals that Tabitha is connected to Miranda, and that both she and Jade are tied to people from earlier cycles. This doesn't mean every character is reincarnated. It means some people appear to return again and again because they failed to stop the original tragedy. That's a crucial distinction. The story isn't saying everyone is trapped in reincarnation. It's suggesting that specific souls are caught in a repeating mission. This revelation recontextualizes almost every vision in the series. Jade's symbols, Tabitha's dreams, the children's voices. These may not be hallucinations at all. They may be memories bleeding into the present. Fans noticed an intriguing pattern. Victor survives the massacre of his generation. Ethan becomes the key child in the current generation. Both can see the boy in white. Both are unusually connected to the town. This has led to a popular fan theory that each cycle includes a child who plays a special role in resisting or witnessing the curse. The show hasn't confirmed this pattern outright, but the parallels are difficult to ignore. Whether Ethan is literally repeating Victor's role or simply echoing it, the writers clearly want us to compare the two. For years, fans focused on killing monsters. Now, many believe that was never the real objective. The children keep drawing Tabitha and Jade toward the truth. Their message isn't fight, it's remember. Recent official previews continue to frame the unresolved fate of the sacrificed children as central to the endgame of the series. If that's true, then escaping the town may depend less on defeating evil than on undoing the original sacrifice. This theory fits the emotional core of the show. From isn't just about surviving monsters. It's about confronting an ancient injustice that has echoed through multiple generations. Perhaps the biggest theory of all. Nothing in Fromville feels random. People arrive. They struggle. They uncover clues. They fail. Then another group arrives. Victor lived through one cycle. Miranda failed. Now Tabitha and Jade are confronting the same mystery from a new generation. Everything points toward repetition. Not exact repetition, but recurring patterns. The town doesn't simply trap people. It resets the game. The introduction of reincarnation transformed the loop theory into something much richer. The loop isn't just physical. It's historical. The same conflict keeps returning until someone finally changes the outcome. The monsters are terrifying. Martin warned us about something bigger. Now the children reveal that the heart of the mystery isn't destruction, it's memory. Every vision, every symbol, every lullaby, every appearance of the boy in white. They all point back to one ancient event that the town refuses to let anyone forget. And that brings us to the next chapter. Because if the town keeps repeating itself, then we need to understand who benefits from those cycles. For 3 seasons, fans were convinced they were hunting the final villain. The monsters seemed unstoppable. Martin hinted at something worse. The music box proved there were forces beyond the creatures. The Anghkooey children shifted the focus toward an ancient tragedy. Then Season 4 introduced a figure who immediately changed the conversation. The man in yellow. Within days, fan communities stopped asking whether the monsters were in charge. Instead, they started asking a much bigger question. Has the real villain been hiding in plain sight this entire time? When the man in yellow appeared, many viewers immediately assumed he sat at the top of Fromville's hierarchy. Why? Because unlike the monsters, he doesn't rely on intimidation alone. His presence suggests knowledge, patience, and purpose. Throughout the series, we've learned that different supernatural forces seem to operate at different levels. The monsters hunt. The music box entity manipulates. The boy in white guides. The Anghkooey children remember. So where does the man in yellow fit? Many fans believe he's the first character who appears to understand the entire system. Notice something interesting. The monsters rarely seem to make long-term plans. They're dangerous. They're intelligent, but they mostly react to opportunities. The man in yellow feels different. He gives the impression of someone who understands the bigger picture. That's why many viewers believe he isn't another monster. He's the one managing the game. The writers deliberately present him differently from every previous threat. Whether he's the creator of the town or simply its highest-ranking servant remains unknown. But his introduction tells us one thing. The mythology has entered its final stage point. One of the most popular theories after later revelations is that everything began with a bargain, not a random curse, not an accident, a choice. According to this theory, someone in the distant past wanted something desperately enough to make a terrible sacrifice. Power, immortality, protection, control, whatever was offered. The cost was children. That theory gained traction because the mythology repeatedly returns to sacrifice rather than simple violence. The Anghkooey children are not presented as random victims. They're central to everything. If the curse began with their sacrifice, then the monsters, the cycles, and the town itself may all be consequences of that original decision. This theory connects more pieces than almost any other. It explains why the children matter, why memory matters, why the cycle keeps repeating, and why simply killing monsters has never solved anything. Now imagine the bargain from another angle. What if the people who made the sacrifice received exactly what they wanted, but not in the way they expected? Instead of eternal life, they received eternal existence. Not as humans, as monsters. That would explain several mysteries. Why the creatures appear human. Why they wear ordinary clothing. Why they seem trapped inside fixed rules. Why they never appear to leave the town. They didn't win. They became prisoners of the bargain. This idea fits classic supernatural storytelling. A wish is granted, but it's twisted. The reward becomes the punishment. The series hasn't confirmed this outright, but it would neatly connect the monsters to the town's ancient history. One of the most fascinating theories doesn't focus on any single character. It focuses on the town itself. Think about what happens over and over again. New people arrive. They organize. They discover clues. They believe they're making progress. Then something happens that resets their momentum. Sometimes it's a massacre. Sometimes it's internal conflict. Sometimes it's a supernatural event. The details change. The pattern doesn't. Fans began describing Fromville as a machine. Not a machine built from gears. A machine built from people. Each generation repeats the same mistakes because they never understand what came before. That's why Victor's memories matter. That's why Miranda mattered. That's why Tabitha and Jade matter. The town doesn't erase history. It buries it. Whether or not the town is literally alive, it behaves like a system designed to preserve itself. Every breakthrough is met with resistance. Every answer reveals another layer. That pattern feels intentional. For most of the series, the characters have one goal: get home. But what if that's impossible until they solve the original mystery? This theory argues that Fromville isn't testing survival. It's testing understanding. You can't simply drive away. You have to end whatever started the cycle. That idea explains why previous generations appear to have failed. They search for exits, not causes. The current generation may be the first to get close to the truth. This theory transforms the story from a survival horror into a tragedy about unfinished history. The real victory isn't escaping. It's making sure the next cycle never begins. One of the most popular modern theories is that these two characters represent opposite sides of the same conflict. Not necessarily good versus evil. More like preservation versus freedom. The boy in white repeatedly nudges people toward important discoveries. The man in yellow appears connected to the forces keeping the cycle alive. If that's true, then every major event in the series has been influenced by an invisible struggle happening behind the scenes. The townspeople aren't just trying to survive. They're caught in the middle of a conflict they barely understand. This theory gives both characters a clear narrative purpose. Instead of random supernatural figures, they become representatives of competing agendas. Whether that's exactly where the writers are heading remains to be seen. When you step back and look at every major theory, something remarkable happens. The focus of the show keeps moving. Season 1 asks, how do we survive? Season 2 asks, what else lives here? Season 3 asks, has this happened before? Season 4 asks, who benefits from it continuing? That's not accidental. It's a carefully constructed escalation. The monsters become less important. The history becomes more important. The curse becomes more important. The people who created or inherited that curse become the real mystery. After 4 seasons of From, thousands of theories have been created. Some were about the monsters. Some were about the town. Some were about time. Some were about ancient sacrifices. Some theories sounded impossible when fans first mentioned them, until the show revealed a clue that made them suddenly interesting. That is what makes From different. The mystery is not built around one big question. It is built around hundreds of smaller questions that slowly point toward the same idea. This place is not random. The people are not random. The events are not random. Everything appears connected. So now we have to ask the biggest question of all. What is Fromville really? Everything begins with a tree. Every person who enters Fromville sees it. A fallen tree blocking the road. A warning. A boundary. A moment where the normal world ends. At first, the tree seems like a simple plot device. But in From, simple things are rarely simple. The tree represents a doorway between two realities. The characters are not just taking a wrong turn. They're crossing into a place that exists outside normal rules. The strongest interpretation is that the tree is not the trap. The tree is the entrance. The trap begins after. Once someone crosses into Fromville, normal reality no longer applies. Distance changes. Time becomes unreliable. The world follows different rules. This explains why the road always brings people back. They're no longer traveling through normal geography. They're inside a system. The town looks normal, but it is not. The missing motel, the impossible electricity, the roads that lead nowhere, the empty spaces. Everything suggests that Fromville is not a normal location. It is either a supernatural dimension, a constructed reality, a cursed place, or a combination of all three. The most important detail is this. The town feels designed, not naturally formed. Design point, one of the biggest mistakes people make when analyzing From is thinking the supernatural events are random. They are not. The town has rules. The monsters have rules. The Faraway Trees have rules. The talismans have rules. The visions have rules. This is important because rules suggest structure, and structure suggests something created this system. The creatures are the first mystery. They are terrifying, but they are not the complete answer. They represent the physical threat, the punishment, the fear, the reason people hide. But after everything we have learned, the strongest theory is the monsters are not the creators of Fromville. They are products of it. The most complete explanation is the creatures were once connected to humanity. Something happened, a sacrifice, a bargain, a supernatural event, and they became trapped in their current form. That explains their human appearance, their old-fashioned clothing, their memories, their intelligence, their strange behavior. They're not animals. They're something that used to be human. The talismans are one of the biggest clues. Why do they work? The answer may not be magic. They may represent a rule of the system. The same way the monsters cannot ignore certain boundaries. The residents cannot escape certain boundaries. Fromville operates like a supernatural game. Every player has restrictions. The humans, the monsters, the entities, everyone follows rules. The Anghkooey children may be the most important part of the entire mystery because they represent the original tragedy. Before the monsters, before the cycles, before the current residents, something happened, something involving these children, and that event created the foundation of everything that followed. The strongest explanation is that the original tragedy involved a sacrifice. A group of people wanted something. Power, protection, immortality, something impossible, and they made a choice. But the choice created consequences. The children became victims. The town became trapped, and the cycle began. The idea that Fromville operates in cycles explains many mysteries. Why do symbols repeat? Why do visions connect different people? Why do certain characters feel connected to the past? Why does history seem to repeat? Because it does. The same story keeps happening. Different people, different generation, same conflict. Tabitha and Jade represent something extremely important. They're not simply discovering clues. They're connecting with them. Their visions suggest that some people are connected to previous cycles. They are the ones who can see the pattern, the ones who can remember what everyone else forgot. Victor is perhaps the most important character in understanding Fromville, because he is proof that the cycle has happened before. He carries memories from a previous disaster. He is living evidence of history repeating. Without Victor, the current residents might never realize they are not the first people trapped here. The boy in white remains one of the biggest mysteries. But one thing seems clear. He does not represent the same force as the monsters. He guides. He warns. He helps. The question is whether he is powerful enough to break the cycle, or whether he is simply another piece trapped inside it. The man in yellow represents the biggest unknown. He could be the creator of the system, the protector of the cycle, a servant of something older, a representation of the evil, keeping everything alive. But regardless of his exact role, his existence suggests one important thing. The people trapped in Fromville are fighting something much older than the monsters that if we combine every major clue. What has From become? A possible explanation looks like this. Long ago, an event involving sacrifice created a supernatural system. That system transformed people into monsters. It trapped victims inside a repeating cycle. Over generations, different people arrived. Some became victims. Some discovered pieces of the truth. Some tried to escape, but nobody understood the entire picture. Until now, the current group may be different because they have something previous groups lacked. They have Victor's memories, Tabitha's connection, Jade's visions, the children's message, and the knowledge that the monsters are only one part of the problem. This is the final question. Is it punishment? A prison? An experiment? A supernatural battlefield? The answer may be all of them. Fromville appears designed to create the same conflict again and again. Fear versus hope. Control versus freedom. Forgetting versus remembering. The play survives because people keep losing the battle that, if the show follows its current themes, the ending probably will not be kill the monsters and go home. That would be too simple. The real ending will likely involve understanding the original tragedy, freeing the children, breaking the cycle, and stopping the force that benefits from repeating history. The escape is not the final victory. The final victory is making sure nobody else gets trapped again. The reason From has created such a massive theory community is because the show is not only asking, can these people survive? It is asking, can these people understand? Because every mystery has the same pattern. The answer was always there. The town was showing them. The children were showing them. The memories were showing them. The problem was never a lack of clues. The problem was that nobody knew how to connect them. And maybe that is the entire point of From. The only way out is understanding why you were trapped in the first place. At the beginning of From, the biggest question seems obvious. How do we escape? But after spending enough time inside the town, another question becomes impossible to ignore. Who created this place? Because the more you look at Fromville, the more you realize something feels wrong. Not obviously wrong. That's what makes it disturbing. The town looks normal. Almost too normal. There are houses, a diner, a sheriff's station, a church, a clinic, a school, a gas station. Everything looks like a small American town. But the closer you examine it, the more cracks start appearing. The town feels like someone built a copy of normal life without completely understanding how normal life works. And that observation created one of the biggest theories in the entire fandom. One of the earliest and strongest theories was that the town was not a natural place. It was created, not discovered, created. The reason fans believe this comes from one simple idea. Nothing in Fromville works exactly the way it should. The buildings exist. The systems don't. The town has everything people need to survive. But almost nothing has a logical explanation. The biggest example? The electricity. Jim Matthews notices something that many characters ignore. The lights work. The refrigerators work. The appliances work. But the power system makes no sense. There are no visible power lines connected to the town. No clear source of energy. No normal infrastructure. For someone like Jim, this is impossible. Electricity cannot simply appear. It has to come from somewhere. This immediately created several theories. This became one of the most popular explanations. The idea is that Fromville is not a normal location. It is a recreation, a copy, a supernatural imitation of a real place. Imagine someone trying to recreate a town from memory. They understand the basics. Houses, roads, shops, electricity. But they don't understand the details. The result looks correct from a distance. But when you examine it closely, everything feels wrong. This theory explains several mysteries. Why do the wires not work normally? Why does the motel sign exist without a motel? Why does the town feel familiar but incomplete? One of the strangest details in From is something many viewers notice immediately. The motel sign, the swimming pool, the complete absence of a motel. At first, it seems like a small production detail, but From fans know better. Nothing is accidental. The question becomes, why would a town have a motel sign and pool, but no motel? There are several possibilities. Maybe the building existed once. Maybe something happened. A fire, a disaster, a previous cycle. The structure disappeared. But somehow, parts of it remained. This connects to the artificial town theory. Maybe whoever created Fromville didn't build a perfect copy. Maybe they only created what was necessary. A pool, a sign, the idea of a motel, but not the actual building. Almost like someone understood the concept, but not the reality. Another theory suggests Fromville is not fixed. It evolves. It adds things. It removes things. It changes depending on what is happening. This would explain why characters constantly discover new locations and new mysteries. The town may not be a place. It may be a living system. This is one of the strongest theories in the fandom. The idea is simple. Fromville is not somewhere on Earth. It exists separately from normal reality. A hidden dimension. A supernatural space. A place with different rules. This theory explains many strange events. The impossible road. The faraway trees. The changing geography. The strange weather. The communication problems. Everything points toward one possibility. The laws of reality inside Fromville are different. Think about the road. The characters are not driving hundreds of miles. They're not crossing a border. They're not entering a secret location. They simply turn around, and reality changes. That is not normal geography. That is something else. A pocket dimension explains it better than almost any normal explanation. Early in the series, this theory became extremely popular. Maybe Fromville was created by humans. Maybe it is an experiment. The town could be a secret military project, a psychological experiment, a controlled environment, a research facility. The evidence? The town behaves like a controlled test. People are placed inside. Their behavior is observed. Rules exist. Variables change. The radio voice made this theory even stronger, because suddenly it seemed possible that someone was monitoring the residents. Jim's radio tower was one of the biggest turning points in Season 1. For the first time, the residents receive a response. Someone answers, and that person knows what Tabitha is doing. That means one thing. Someone is watching. The question is, who? Some fans believe the voice belonged to a human organization. Maybe people outside the town were monitoring everything. Maybe Fromville was an experiment. Maybe the residents were test subjects. This theory made sense until the supernatural elements became impossible to ignore. Because a normal experiment does not explain. The monsters, the faraway trees, the visions, the children, the supernatural entities. A human experiment might explain the observation, but it doesn't explain the entire world. This theory became more popular as the mythology expanded. Instead of asking, who is watching? Fans began asking, what if the town itself is watching? What if Fromville is not just a location? What if it is an entity? Think about how the town behaves. Whenever characters get close to answers, something changes. Whenever hope grows, something attacks. Whenever people try to escape, the environment responds. It almost feels like the town has a survival instinct, like a living organism protecting itself. The talismans are one of the biggest unanswered questions in From. They completely changed the rules. Before the talismans, the monsters seemed unstoppable. After the talismans, humans have a chance. But why? Who created them? Why do they work? Why do the monsters respect them? One interesting fan theory suggests the talismans don't actually repel monsters. They establish a rule, a boundary, a condition. The monsters are not physically unable to enter. They simply cannot enter because the rules of Fromville prevent it. This would fit a larger pattern. The town operates like a supernatural game. Everything has rules. The monsters have rules. The trees have rules. The entities have rules. Even escape has rules. After analyzing all these theories, one thing becomes clear. Almost every explanation points toward the same idea. Fromville is not random. It was created, maintained, or controlled. Whether it is a supernatural dimension, an ancient curse, or something even stranger. The town follows a design. And if there is a design, there must be a designer. That leads to the next major mystery. The creatures that hunt the residents every night. Because if someone built this place, then the monsters were placed here for a reason. When people describe From, they usually start with the same image. A dark road, a trapped town, and creatures walking through the streets at night. The monsters are the first thing viewers remember. They're the reason people hide indoors. They're the reason the talismans matter. They're the reason every sunset creates tension. But after 4 seasons, one thing has become increasingly clear. The monsters might not be the biggest mystery in From. They might actually be the easiest mystery. Because unlike almost everything else in the show, the monsters follow a pattern. They have rules. And understanding those rules may reveal something much bigger about the town itself. When the creatures first appear, viewers immediately try to categorize them. Are they vampires? Demons? Ghosts? Aliens? Mutated humans? Some kind of supernatural predators? The problem is, they don't perfectly match anything. They look human, but they are not human. They speak, but they don't communicate honestly. They smile, but they don't show kindness. They appear calm, but everything they do is designed to create fear. And that strange combination created the first major monster theory. This is one of the strongest and longest-running theories in the From fandom. The idea is simple. These creatures were not always monsters. They were once people. And there are several reasons fans believe this. The creatures don't look like traditional monsters. They don't have horns. They don't have obvious mutations. They don't look like animals. Instead, they appear like ordinary people. A nurse, a milkman, a young woman, a smiling neighbor, a worker. Their clothing also appears connected to a specific period of history. This raises an important question. Why would supernatural creatures choose human identities from different decades? Unless those identities are real. The second clue is their behavior. The creatures don't attack immediately. They talk. They negotiate. They manipulate. They understand human emotions. Take Jasmine from Colony House. She doesn't simply break in. She convinces Kevin to open the window. She creates trust. She uses loneliness against him. That is not animal behavior. That is psychological manipulation. It suggests memory, experience, understanding. One of the most disturbing details about the creatures is their smiles. They almost never show anger. They don't scream. They don't appear excited. They smile, even while killing. Fans have spent years trying to understand why. One theory suggests the smile represents something important. The creatures are not hunting because they are hungry. They are hunting because they enjoy control. The fear, the helplessness, the moment when a person realizes they have lost. Another major theory is that the creatures are the result of an ancient curse. According to this idea, something happened long before the current residents arrived. A ritual, a sacrifice, a deal, a mistake, and the monsters are the consequence. This theory became stronger when the show began revealing more about the children, the town's history, and the repeated cycles. The monsters may not be the beginning of the story. They may be the result of something much older. One of the biggest ideas in the fandom is that the origin of Fromville involves a sacrifice. The Anghkooey children are central to this theory. Something happened to them in the past. Something terrible. And that event created the supernatural system that traps people today. If this theory is correct, then the monsters may be connected to that original event. They are not random creatures. They are survivors of a bargain gone wrong. This theory takes the previous idea even further. What if the original people of the town wanted immortality? What if they received exactly what they asked for, but in the worst possible way? They survived, but they lost their humanity. They cannot age. They cannot leave. They cannot return to normal life. They exist forever. But as monsters, this would explain several strange details. Why they appear human. Why they remember human behavior. Why they seem trapped in old identities. This is one of the biggest questions fans have asked since Season 1. The monsters are clearly faster and stronger than humans. So why walk? Why slowly approach houses? Why give people time to escape? There are several possible explanations. The simplest answer is psychological. They know humans cannot escape. They are not chasing prey. They are enjoying the hunt. Running would remove the fear. Walking creates it. Every slow step becomes a countdown. That a more interesting possibility is that they are not choosing to walk. Maybe they are restricted. Maybe the same supernatural laws that trap humans also control them. Remember, the monsters do not behave randomly. They never ignore the talismans. They never attack during daylight. They follow patterns. That suggests rules. And if there are rules, someone created them. The discovery of the underground caves changed everything. Before this moment, the creatures seemed like mysterious beings appearing from nowhere. But then viewers discovered their hiding place. They sleep underground. They keep belongings. They have a home. That detail is extremely important because it suggests organization. These are not animals living in the wilderness. They have a society, a routine, a history. The caves also contain strange symbols and images. Many fans believe these drawings connect the monsters to the older history of Fromville. The surface town may represent the modern layer of the mystery, but underground is where the truth is buried. Literally, the deeper the characters go, the older the secrets become. This is perhaps the biggest change in fan thinking. During Season 1, everyone believed, kill the monsters, solve the problem. But later seasons changed that completely. Martin's warning was the turning point. The creatures are only one part of something larger. The music box, the visions, the children, the cycles, the entities, all of these suggest a bigger supernatural system. The monsters are dangerous, but they may not be in control. This is a more unusual theory. What if the monsters are not protecting the town? What if they're protecting something inside it? Think about it. They prevent escape. They keep people trapped. But why? Maybe their purpose is not simply killing. Maybe their purpose is maintaining the cycle, keeping people from discovering something, keeping something hidden. Smiley became one of the most important monsters because he changed the rules. For the first time, humans managed to kill one of these creatures. That raised a huge question. If they can die, what are they? Are they truly immortal? Are they replaceable? Was Smiley special? Or was his death part of something bigger? The answer changed how fans viewed the entire monster mythology. Because killing one monster did not save anyone. The system continued, which suggests the creatures are only pieces of a larger machine. After everything we know, the strongest theory is this. The monsters were once connected to the human history of Fromville. They are not random creatures. They are part of an ancient event, a curse, a bargain, or a supernatural cycle. Their human appearance is not a disguise. It is a reminder. They represent what the town does to people. It takes something human and transforms it into something unrecognizable. The biggest mistake viewers made was assuming the monsters were the mystery. They aren't. They are evidence. Evidence that something much older and much more powerful created this nightmare. The creatures tell us the town has rules. The caves tell us the town has history. The children tell us the town has a past. And the next mystery takes us deeper into that past. Because before we understand the monsters, we need to understand the place they come from. For a long time, everyone thought the mystery of From was about death. The monsters, the creatures in the forest, the people who never survived the night. But slowly, the show revealed something much deeper. The real mystery was not just about who dies. It was about who has been here before. Because the strangest thing about Fromville is that the past refuses to stay buried. Memories appear in dreams. Symbols appear before characters understand them. People see places they have never visited. And sometimes, they remember things that happened before they were even born. This is where the biggest theory in the entire fandom begins. The idea that Fromville is not just trapping people. It is repeating history before anyone understood the children, before anyone understood the cycles. There was the boy in white. Victor sees him. Ethan sees him. Other characters experience visions connected to him. And from the beginning, fans notice something unusual. The boy in white is different from almost every other supernatural presence in the show. He does not attack. He does not threaten. He does not manipulate people through fear. Instead, he guides. But the biggest question remains: why? The most popular theory is that the boy in white is an ally. The evidence is strong. He appears when characters are close to important discoveries. He guides Ethan. He helps Victor understand parts of the town. He leads people toward answers. Unlike the creatures, his actions usually prevent death rather than cause it. However, there is a problem. The boy in white never gives complete answers. He never explains who he is, what Fromville is, why people are trapped, how to escape. He only gives small pieces, almost like he is limited. This became one of the biggest discussions among fans. If he knows the truth, why not simply explain everything? One theory suggests that he cannot. Maybe supernatural rules prevent him from directly revealing the answers. This idea fits something we see throughout From. The characters are constantly given clues, but never the full picture. The truth is always hidden behind another layer. When the Anghkooey children become important, fans begin asking another question. Where does the boy in white fit into their story? Are they connected? Are they enemies? Are they victims of the same event? The difference between them is obvious. The children appear frightened. The boy in white appears calm. The children ask for help. The boy in white gives directions. This has created several theories. Point one fan theory suggests that the boy in white may have been connected to the ancient tragedy but escaped a different fate from the other children. This would explain why. He knows the town, he understands the cycle, he can interact with survivors. However, the show has not confirmed his exact identity. For now, he remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. Few mysteries created more confusion than the children. When Tabitha begins seeing them, many viewers immediately assumed they were another threat. But as the story develops, their role becomes much more complicated. They're not monsters. They're victims. And their message appears connected to one central idea. Remember, for a long time, fans debated this word. Some believed it was a name, a location, a warning, a supernatural language. But the biggest revelation changed the interpretation. The word is connected to the idea of remembering, and that changes everything. Because the children are not asking to be feared. They are asking to be understood. This became one of the strongest theories after the children's importance was revealed. The idea is simple. The town's biggest secret is not hidden in the future. It is hidden in the past. The children represent the beginning of the tragedy, the original mistake, the event that created everything. If the survivors can understand what happened to them, they may finally understand how to escape. Point one of the biggest themes in From is forgotten history. Victor spent years alone, carrying memories nobody believed. The town destroyed evidence. People arrived without knowing what happened before them. Every generation starts from zero, and that may be exactly what keeps the cycle alive. This is probably the biggest theory in the entire fandom. The idea, this has happened before. Many times, the current residents are not the first people trapped, and they may not be the last. The evidence comes from several connections. Tabitha discovers connections to Miranda, a woman from a previous cycle. The similarities suggest that certain people may return again and again, not physically, but spiritually, through memories, through visions, through unfinished purposes. Jade discovers connections to Christopher, another person from the past who saw the same symbols and struggled to understand them. This creates an important pattern. Different generations, same mystery, same symbols, same struggle. This is one of the most popular interpretations. The idea is that Tabitha and Jade are not experiencing random visions. They are remembering previous lives. They are connected to people who came before them. This would explain why they see things others cannot, why they understand symbols, why they are drawn toward the mystery. They're not discovering the story. They are remembering it, probably not. This is where many theories become too extreme. The show does not suggest every person trapped in Fromville has lived previous lives. Instead, the pattern seems focused on specific individuals. People connected to the original tragedy. People who have a role in solving it. Victor is one of the most important characters in understanding the cycle. Why? Because he survived when almost everyone else failed. He carries memories from a previous disaster. He remembers things nobody else does. For decades, Victor protected the town's history without fully understanding it. This makes him incredibly important, because if the cycle depends on people forgetting, Victor is the person who refused to forget. The connection between Victor and the boy in white is one of the strongest clues in the series. Victor has seen him since childhood. That means the boy in white existed long before the current residents arrived. He is not connected only to Tabitha's story. He is connected to the entire history of Fromville. This is one of the most interesting ways to view the entire story. Maybe the cycle is not about punishment. Maybe it is about unfinished business. The children are waiting for someone to complete what was never finished. Every generation gets closer, but every generation fails. Until now, the strongest theory after everything we've seen is this. The children are the emotional center of From. The monsters represent fear. The entities represent power. The town represents the trap. But the children represent the reason the trap exists. Their story is the beginning, and understanding their story may be the only way to end it. The boy in white showed us that not every supernatural force in Fromville wants humans dead. The children showed us that the past is still alive. The vision showed us that memory itself may be the key. And the cycle theory changed everything. Because if the same tragedy has happened again and again, then escaping the town is not enough. Someone has to break the pattern. Someone has to remember what everyone else forgot.